Hey everybody, this is Josh from the Texas chapter of the Extra Pint Crokinole Club. There's several of us around the country right now brainstorming ideas for an American version of the National Crokinole Association circuit in Canada. The NCA system uses a fixed and mostly linear NASCAR type point system. It functions both as a rating system and as a circuit point system. This works well because its events are confined to a small geographical area in southern Ontario and largely consist of the same participants. The downside of this system that it isn't really relevant to those outside of its sphere. Here in the U.S., we have small, isolated clubs scattered from Alaska to Florida. Few of us can easily get to Ontario once, let alone 4 times a season, to accumulate the points necessary to compete for a title. Inter-club play is also challenging due to vast distances, so it's up to us to figure out how to best come up with a rating system and a point system that can work well with a decentralized body of players. The general consensus so far is that all clubs should adopt the APRID ELO system. This system was developed back in 1939 for use in chess, but has proven versatile enough to be adopted by a number of different gaming communities. The system is based on your probable win percentage against another opponent based on the difference between your relative ratings. Its use in Crokinole is based on the percentage of points won against an opponent rather than a straight-up win or loss. Nathan Walsh up in Canada has been using this system for a few years now. He posts his results and ELO scores on CrokinoleReference.com if you want to check that out. The goal here is to stay as close to the NCA as possible, so I suggest we use their methods whenever we can. When we asked Nathan about this, he sent the following document. I just want to preempt this by saying Steve Brown of Brown Castle Games is working on an app that will do all this math for you, so please don't panic. We're just going to go over the nuances of it so we can make some decisions on how to proceed. So here at page 1, it gives you a formula. It's not as complicated as it looks. The math is actually pretty simple. Basically what it's saying, if you're the same rating as your opponent, you should win half the time, lose half the time, or in our case, win 50% of the points when you play somebody in a match. If your rating is 100 points higher than your opponent, you should be expected to win 64% of the time, or in Crokinole, you should win 64% of the points. Your rating will go up if you win more than 64% of the points. It will go down if you win less than 64% of the points. If you're playing in a round robin, you simply add up your win percentage expectancy for every single opponent and divide by the number of opponents. You're basically just taking the average. So in this example, there's 3 opponents in your pool. You add up your win percentage expectancy, divide it by 3. You should win 75% of the points. Your rating will go up if you win more than 75% of the points total. It'll go down if you win less than that. To calculate your new rating, as you would after a round robin, you take a multiplier K, which we'll talk about that a little later. You multiply that by the difference between your actual win percentage and your expected win percentage, times the number of games you played, and add it to your old rating. That'll be the new rating. Again, Steve Brown's app is going to do all this math for you. You just need to input the scores. The document goes on to talk about adjusted win percentage. This happens if someone doesn't complete all the games available in a round robin. Again, the app should take care of this as well. Next, the document talks about including new players into the schema. We're all going to be new players to this, so we're all going to start with a rating of 1500. It does talk about going through the first time, everyone is going to have a 50% expected win rate. Then it gets kind of confusing because he talks about the computer adjusting the ratings up or downward as the iteration occurs 1,000 times, so the expected win percentage is close to the adjusted win percentage. This is where we have some options with regards to that. So back in January 2023 here, Extra Pint Voorheesville held a singles tournament, and they had one gigantic round robin of 20 people. The chart you're looking at, we're missing Mike. I'm sorry, Mike should be between Mark and Seth at number 11. I left him out, so apologies there. But I calculated everyone's ELO score based on that formula we saw earlier. And for an example, here's Jay's. So we used the multiplier of 30 times the difference between his actual win percentage and 0.5, because theoretically everybody should be 50-50, multiplied by the number of games played, add it to 1500 because everyone started with 1500, and you get 1657. Now unfortunately the data set isn't exactly complete. I don't have the data for the single elimination phase that took place just after this. Magic Mike ended up winning the tournament. His ELO score should definitely be higher than what you see here, but this is at least a start. So we'll take a look at CrokinoleReference.com and we'll check out Kiner Ryman's page and see how Nathan Walsh calculated his scores. We'll focus on the Ontario singles tournament that took place on May 6. So during this match, again, this is all after the fact, but Nathan did 4 separate calculations here. The columns are in perfect order. Obviously, the preliminary was first, the power pool is second, semifinals, and then finals. So what I take away from this is we should calculate the scores after every single round robin phase and after every head-to-head match during a single elimination phase. As you'll notice here in these columns, the rod games and the number of games don't exactly match up. When you're playing head-to-head matches, you want to take the total number of points and divide by 8 when you do your recalculation. Now, it's been pointed out, and the problem with this system is that these numbers are only accurate within the pool of players you're playing with, so they're really not transferable between clubs. If us down in Houston go up to the Voorheesville guys, the win percentages aren't going to match up because we're two different people, we don't play each other, there's no common denominator. If we go to the NCA and one of us has a 16 or 1700 rating, we're not going to play like that. We'll probably be down in the B or C pool because those guys are really good. And likewise, if they come down here to Houston, they'd be playing at the 2000 level rather than the 1700 or 1800 level. What we need is a benchmark or a common denominator. Best one there is the NCA itself. So how would you go about normalizing your club's ELO ratings with those of the NCA? Now, the easiest way to do this is to go to Ontario and play in a few NCA tournaments. Establish your ELO rating there, and then come back to your own club, use that ELO rating, and reduce everyone else's ELO rating in your club by the difference between your new ELO rating at the NCA and your old one at your club. It should be lower. We'll take a look at my brother's J sheet on CrokinoleReference.com, and we'll concentrate on the last tournament he played, or at least the last one that's up on Crokinole Reference here, that took place on January 28th in Elmira. And he had 2 score calculations done, of course, after the fact, after this tournament. One from the preliminary round and one from the round of 16. And you'll notice his rating before and rating at the end of the tournament. It turns out he way overperformed, and this rating isn't really accurate. This 1584 doesn't tell the whole story. So how did Jay actually perform? And this is where we have some decisions to make. If someone does go to the NCA and establish a rating there, even if he only has 5 columns, at what point does that ELO rating become reflective of reality? Well, we go back to this slide here that was confusing earlier, where it talks about the computer adjusting ratings until the expected win percentage is extremely close to the actual win percentage. So if we go back and look at Jay's sheet here, we see in the preliminary round, his opponent's rating was 1577 on average, and his win percentage 56.8%. And in the round of 16, his opponent's average rating was 1704, and his win percentage was 46.4%. So what I did, I managed to reverse engineer his actual ELO score based on the formula was given to us earlier. When you calculate the expected win percentage, what ELO score do you need so the expected win percentage matches the actual win percentage? So we'll take the first one here where his win percentage was 56.8%. You put that in your calculator, you hit the 1 over X button, and you get a number. You take away -1, hit the equal sign, and you end up with that. You're then going to hit log 10. And you get that number. You multiply by 400, hit the equal sign, you get that number. You hit the plus minus button, and you're going to add it to your opponent's average score for the round. Hit the equal sign. That was Jay's actual level of play during that round. And for simplicity, I just dropped everything after the decimal point, so we're just going to use 1624. I did the calculation again for the round of 16. And we come up with 1678. Then take his ELO scores, 1624. He played 9 games at that rating, and he played 7 games at 1678 rating, divided by the total number of games, and his average ELO rating for that tournament was 1647. That's well above his ELO score of 1584 that was calculated using normal adjustments. And that 1647 rating is probably more reflective of reality, as it's based on actual results. I then tried to figure out how many games Jay would actually have to play at that level for his NCA ELO score starting from 1500 to reflect his actual level of play at 1647. So I went back to the rating change formula and plugged in Jay's numbers based on where his NCA score is now and where it should be according to the data, and solved for the number of games. When you do that with a K multiplier of 30, it's going to take another 22.7 games playing at that rate for the ELO score to catch up with reality. Now, if you look down here, that 30 is only good for the first 50 games, and it goes down to 20 after that. Once it goes down to 20, he's going to need 34.1 more games for the ELO score to catch up. So I'm going to advocate that if you go to the NCA and play in a tournament there, your ELO score that you bring home to your club is the one you reverse engineered, because that reflects exactly how you performed at the NCA level. Aaron Lewis and Chet Bolke also went up to Elmira with Jay, and we'll take a look at Aaron's sheet on CrokinoreReference.com. And here we see he kind of underperformed. He had a kind of a rough day, and he finished with a ELO score of 1460. Now, if you re-engineer his performance, his actual performance was 1453, which is actually turns out to be pretty close. So again, I'll argue that he should bring home a 1453 score. For some reason, Chet's performance wasn't recorded. I don't know why it's not up on Crokinole Reference. That's a question for Nathan. Maybe he can dig that up and put that up there. But the only thing up there for Chet is US Open. The next step in this process is to normalize your club's ELO ratings with those of the NCA. So the ELO ratings in your club will be reflective of the mathematical reality should anyone go up there and play in that league. When trying to figure out how to best do this with extra pint scores, I ran into a few more problems. My initial thought was to take the difference between Jay's NCA score and Jay's club score and apply that to the entire club. So in this case, take away 73 points from everyone in extra pint. The other option there is to take Jay's actual performance of 1647 and take the difference between that and his actual performance in the club round robin, and in this case that's 68 points. 73 and 68 are actually pretty close. I'm not sure in this case it makes much of a difference. However, when you drop down to Aaron and take his NCA ELO and his club ELO, there's a difference of 156. If you reverse engineer his actual performance in the NCA tournament against his actual performance in the club tournament, it's even bigger. It's 197. So which one do you use? Well, after thinking about it a bit, the answer is neither, because it turns out that a single 19-game round robin isn't nearly enough to establish an accurate club rating. There needs to be more games, and these guys got to play some more singles matches to establish an actual score that can be considered reliable. So I'm going to suggest that no attempt be made to adjust your club scores until everyone in your club, or most people anyway, have at least 50 games under their belt within the club. That's the point within the rating adjustment formula where the multiplier or the K value changes from 30 to 20. At that point, the rating should start to become stable. No one should be moving more than a few dozen points up or down. And in the case of extra pint here, I'd expect to see some separation, Jay ending up about 150 to 200 points north of Aaron, which would be reflective of their relative performances at the NCA. Once that happens, you can now begin the process of normalizing your club scores. If you have a player in your club that has an established NCA rating, that being they've played more than 50 games in the NCA, then use their rating. Take the difference between your NCA rating and your club rating and apply it to the rest of your club. So if we imagine for a moment that these club scores are established and Jay is established at the NCA, we'd simply take 73 from everyone else in the club who did not have an established score. If you have a player in your club that only managed to get to the NCA for a single time, like Aaron here, we're assuming Jay doesn't exist, simply take his reverse engineer score and apply that to your club score. In this case, it'd be minus 163 for the club. Things start to get tricky when you have multiple players with different ELO ratings in the NCA, as in the case with Extra Pint Voorheesville here. Keeping in mind that the club scores we're looking at here aren't established, The odds of two players that have similar ELO scores within their club doing drastically different at the NCA is quite low. So if Jay were to come back with the minus 73, and Aaron, let's say, comes back with a minus 69, you can just average those out, take the difference, and use that number. However, if there does end up being a large gap in performance as we see here, I would suggest doing the following. Each player with an NCA rating uses that rating, or if you've just been up there once, like Aaron, use your derived rating. Then those ELO scores are frozen, at least for the next 50 games or so. Over the normal course of play in your club, you'll be dragging other players' ELO scores down, while your score will remain constant, and eventually they'll settle in at a position relative to where they were before. However, this can take a while, and what I would suggest doing is when you do your ELO rating adjustments, use a higher multiplier, higher K value of 50 or 60 or so. That way we can get it under 20 games to get an accurate rating. If you're like most people and can't get to an NCA event to establish an ELO rating up there, your next best option is to play someone who does have an established rating with the NCA and derive your scores based on your performance against them. Now in my case, the next time I'm home in Albany, I'm going to sit down with my brother Jay, who has an established NCA rating. I'm going to play as many games with him as time will allow, and then I'll take my win percentage against him and derive my ELO rating based on that. Experience tells me that I only win about 25% of the points against Jay, so that would put me 190 points below where his ELO score is, or somewhere in the 1450s or so. If you're not lucky enough to have a brother who has an established NCA rating, you can always come to the US Open. There's plenty of people there that have ratings, and the night before I'm sure they'll be more than happy enough to sit down during the social hour and play a whole bunch of games with you one-on-one, and then you can establish your rating there and take it home to your club. So if you can't make the US Open, don't worry. The idea behind this is that eventually we get enough people out there with normalized ELO ratings that finding one to compare yourself against won't be a huge problem. If you can't make it to upstate New York or Ontario, eventually someone that has will make it out to you. Eventually everyone's club will be normalized and we can move on to step 2. The whole purpose of establishing a normalized ELO rating system is so we can use it as a basis for establishing a circuit ranking system. And I'm suggesting that we use the official World Golf Rankings as a model for that system. Here in the US, we have hundreds of Crokinole players spread out over several states. Golf has thousands of players playing all over the world. Golf has managed to figure out how to accurately rank people according to their performance, even though they're in different tours in different countries all over the planet. To explain how the process works in golf, each player earns a strokes gained rating. This is a performance rating that compares a golfer's performance to his peers. When a golfer enters a tournament, his strokes gained rating is converted into something called performance points. The performance points of all the golfers in the tournament are summed to produce a field rating. This field rating is the total number of ranking points that will be awarded during the tournament, with the winner being awarded approximately 18% of the total points. The second place player will earn 10% and exponentially less for third, fourth, fifth, and so on. The exception to this are the major tournaments, that being the Masters, US Open, British Open, and PGA Tour Championship. The winners of those tournaments earn a whopping 100 ranking points. The total number of ranking points a golfer has earned over a rolling 92-week period is then divided by the number of tournaments that golfer has played in over the same amount of time, with the minimum divisor being 40. The golfer with the highest average is ranked number 1, the second highest 2, and so on. So I'd like to suggest that we apply this system to Crokinole in the following way. First, we would use a player's normalized ELO rating in lieu of golf strokes gained rating. It turns out if you move the decimal place over 3 spaces on an ELO rating, it's remarkably similar to a strokes gained rating on the PGA Tour. We would then use a similar formula to calculate performance points, with the players with the higher ELO ratings getting exponentially more points than the players with the lower ones. This is why it's so important to have your club's ELO ratings normalized before participating in the system. This will allow each tournament to have an accurate field rating and thus award the proper number of ranking points based on the skill level of the players participating in the tournament. Instead of using a divisor of 40, we reduce it to the number of tournaments a competitive player should reasonably expect to attend, say 4, like the NCA. Instead of a rolling 92-week period, we actually establish a season of 1 year, whether it's from January to December, or we can begin and end with the World Crokinole Championships in June. At the end of a season, a champion would be crowned, the points would reset, and we'd start all over again. So that's my idea. This system in theory would allow players to stay within their own geographical region and at the same time compete with players from around the country on a level playing field, although be it indirectly. It is of course based on establishing accurate ELO ratings, which is why I spent so much time on it earlier. So the floor is open for discussion. Let me know your questions, comments, concerns, if you think this is worthwhile pursuing or if it's just a big waste of time. You can leave comments here or on Facebook, but probably the best place to discuss this would be on the Crokinole Clubs United Discord channel. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to listen to me rant. Until next time, happy flicking, everybody.